Good afternoon. I'd like to call to order the November 8th, 2016 regular meeting of the Everett Public Schools Board of Directors. Please stand and join me for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, welcome everyone, and we have a pretty big election day coming here, and so it will be an interesting time for our country. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Director Andrews?
Present.
Director Lassane?
Present.
Vice President Mason? Director Mitchell?
Present.
President Wenta?
Present.
Student Representative Carone?
Present.
Student Representative Farid?
Thank you. We're now at section 4.0, the adoption of the agenda. Our first item of business is the adoption of the agenda. Dr. Cohn, will you please introduce the agenda?
Yes, I will. Consistent with plans established at your 2016 Summer Planning Workshop, tonight's agenda contains several elements related to both the district's strategic plan and the board's annual goals. There is this evening a segment for routine business, a recognition item, a segment for strategic progress reporting, a segment for new business, one for upcoming agenda items, and a segment for board comments. Since publishing this agenda, the following items have been updated. Item 5.1, recognitions, was amended to add a link for the agenda content, a TEDx link actually. No relation, I'm sure. And
Absolutely.
item 8.1, superintendent's report, may be updated during the meeting as is customary for our regular meetings. The board may, of course, elect to change the order of business by a majority vote of the members.
Thank you, Dr. Cohn. Is there a motion for the adoption of the agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved by Director Lassane and seconded by Director Mitchell to adopt the agenda. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we will proceed to the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Motion carries. The agenda is adopted. We're at a very special time now. It's our public recognition of student achievement. Dr. Cohn, I look forward to hearing about this.
I think we all do, actually. Tonight, we get a chance to see, once again, Harshu Munsanari, who is a Henry M. Jackson High School junior, and she was named a 2016 Davidson Fellow Laureate in Science for her thermoelectrics research. She has received a $50,000 scholarship for higher education. And since we've already seen her as a guest speaker at the Washington STEM Alliance, who knows where we're going to see her turn up next? I think Mr. Fleckenstein and I think Mr. Peters are probably going to join in the recognition this evening. Larry?
Yeah. Well, good evening, and it's an honor and a pleasure to recognize an accomplished Jackson High School student, Harshu Munsanuri, for being named a 2016 Davidson Fellow Laureate in Science for her thermoelectric research. She has received a $50,000 scholarship for higher education. She is one of 20 students to be honored and only one of 4 to receive the top scholarship of $50,000. To help share more about Harshu is Principal Dave Peters.
Well, thank you. This is a very special opportunity, very, very special young lady. Harshu has been named, as you've heard, the 2016 Davidson Fellow Laureate in Science for her thermoelectrics research and has received that $50,000 scholarship for higher education. Her project, you have to dial in on this one, was a synthesis of research that she conducted over the course of her freshman year of high school that involves engineering a novel, more cost-effective thermoelectric device to generate electricity from industrial waste heat. In addition to continuing her research as an intern at the University of Washington Chemical Engineering Department, Harshu is the founder of the Math Honor Society, the vice president of the Technology Student Association at Jackson, and the president of the Science, Research, and Engineering Club as well. Extending beyond the competitive environment, she's the curriculum director of the Girls Rock in Science and Mathematics, otherwise known as GRISM, a nonprofit intended to spark interest in unique STEM fields among girls. She will also be a speaker at the upcoming TEDx Snow Isle Libraries event on November 18th. And her presentation will focus on transformations. And Harshu would love to have the opportunity to share a few words with you as well tonight.
First of all, I wanted to start out by saying thank you so much for inviting me. It's a great opportunity to be here and speak with you. I just wanted to mention, I guess, or share with you some of the experiences that I had as a result of this award. So when I received this news, I was pretty surprised. I started out in my freshman year. I was reading an article about thermoelectrics, which are basically a way to generate electricity from heat with no moving parts. And I was wondering why we didn't see this technology in our everyday lives more often. And that inspired me to go looking a little bit deeper. And I ended up conducting my own research in a lab. And this past summer, I had the opportunity to intern at the NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory as well to continue some of the thermoelectrics research that I was conducting. And overall, it's been a great experience. And with the award, I had the opportunity to travel to Washington, D.C. And speak with all of the amazing 19 other laureates, and also meet with Senator Maria Cantwell, Patty Murray, and Representative Susan DelBene. And it was a great experience to talk to them about some of the initiatives that they're looking into for STEM education as well. So thank you.
Harshu, we have a certificate for you, but we have, you and I have something in common. I also have often wondered why we don't use thermoelectric technology in our everyday lives. I'm kidding. I didn't even know it existed. Come on forward, and if I could have the board come forward, I think we want to get some pictures. And absolutely. With a certificate of recognition as we thank you for earning a 2016 Davidson Fellow Laureate for Thermoelectric Research and for representing the Everett Public Schools with excellent. Congratulations. No, thank you. Congratulations, Harshu. We're now at section 6.0, public comments. The board specifically sets aside 2 times during our regular board meetings to hear from our constituents. We do this because we value public input and we want to hear and understand the perspectives that you bring to the table. Dr. Cohn, are there any requests for comments during the first public comment agenda time slot?
There are not.
All right. We're now at section 7.0, the consent agenda. Dr. Cohn, will you please provide an introduction for the consent agenda?
The board's consent agenda includes repetitive business items. These include meeting minutes, personnel actions, expense vouchers, and, for example, recurring contracts. Sometimes the consent agenda will include items that occur less frequently, but are of a routine business nature. The less frequently occurring consent agenda items are usually reviewed by the board in its Friday report 1 or more weeks before the board meeting, when those items are scheduled to appear on the agenda. This gives directors time to ask staff questions about those items or to consider having a broader discussion about the policy implications of a particular item. If consent agenda items are removed by the concurrence of 2 directors, the remaining items are automatically renumbered, and then the board takes a final vote on the consent agenda with a single motion. In the case of this consent agenda, Superintendent's Office received 1 question about an item on what was your question about? It was out of area endorsements, and I was able to answer the question in a lot less time than it's taking me to relate the fact that I answered the question. It was about why do we do them, and the notion was about, in this case, and typically, difficult scheduling choices in secondary schools, and that satisfied the question. There were no other questions, and there were no changes. Therefore, the consent agenda this evening is presented as published for your approval, and we ask that of you.
Thank you, Dr. Cohn. A motion to adopt the consent agenda is in order.
Which means somebody needs to make the motion.
Sorry, my brain.
Is there a motion?
Yes.
Thank
I
you.
move we accept the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been moved by Director Andrews and seconded by Director Mitchell to approve the consent agenda. Does any director wish to remove an item from the consent agenda and place it in the new business section of the agenda? Hearing no
Not on
requests, we
election.
will proceed to the vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say no. Motion carries. Thank you. We're now at Section 8.0, the Superintendent Report. Dr. Cohn.
All right. I think probably the first slide will appear on the screen momentarily, which will be my signal to start.
Yes.
When you see that first picture, what you're going to see is Gateway students who are learning about the democratic process by participating in a mock election. This happens to be an interesting and delightful program operated by the Snohomish County Auditor's Office, and you'll see the equipment that they're using. In the case of this particular mock election, they were asked for their choice about who they'd vote for president. 57.1% chose Hillary Clinton, and 42.9% chose Donald Trump. 8th graders were also asked if the United States Electoral College should change or should it remain the same. 26.5% think it's fine the way it is and shouldn't change. 73.5% think it should be altered. It's a what? I think it's plugged in. I mean, it's a plug-in. You want to try again? It's that thing again. Yes. Oh, now mine went away. Maybe not. Want to do this? I think it's, Luis, I think it's like dead. Let's see if they'll shut off. Let's try this. Let's try one more time, shall we? Let's try this. Not so much. There we go.
There we go.
All right. Maybe Harshu would like to go to work on this. Okay, sorry. Tonight, you got your major item on your agenda is long-term planning for our materials adoption needs. You're going to receive a current long-term adoption overview. We're going to talk about multiple content areas that we'll be facing over the next several years, as well as some critical factors that drive these needs. And you'll be getting a look into the world of English language arts, STEM, humanities, special ed, health and fitness, and we're going to talk with you about some of the costs involved in that. One of the items in your consent agenda was a Medic One grant for CPR training. The Everett Medic One Foundation granted $8,000 to Everett Public Schools to provide CPR training and education to high school students. For many years, our Everett Fire Department firefighters have provided CPR training to high school students during our health classes. This grant provides that we are able to compensate those firefighters. We want to congratulate all of you. You are once again a board of distinction. This is the second time in 3 years, and had we knew that you could get it over and over again, we probably would have helped you apply for it the previous year, but that's on us. You're one of 24 boards to be recognized, which is, we understand from WASDA, the highest number of boards to be recognized in this particular program. This year's award was focused on being accountable and open to the public and seeking divergent perspectives in decision making, on adopting a collaboratively developed district plan focused on learning and achievement, on employing and supporting quality teachers, administrators, and other staff, and providing significant professional development, and our efforts, your focus in particular on closing the opportunity gap. So we all, although we are saving the cake for a later date for reasons we won't share with you now, we want to make sure that you know that we are very grateful for all of the time, effort, and energy that you put in. They're truly, even though you may not get Board of the Year again because they tend to rotate that around a bit, we want you to know from our perspective you're definitely the Board of the Year. So congratulations on all of us. We also wanted you to know that some of our fall sports teams are going to be involved in post-season competition. On November 5, the boys cross-country teams from Everett and Jackson high schools competed in the state cross-country meet in Pasco. Everett team finished 13th among the 3As, and Jackson placed 8th among the 4As. And Matthew Watkins, a senior, placed second overall. The Jackson High School girls soccer team is hosting Union High School tonight, November 8th. So obviously they're not voting. The winner, or maybe not watching the elections, the winner will advance to the second round of the state tournament on Saturday, November 12th, either Puyallup or Skyline. Several winners from the district qualified for the state meet at King County Aquatic Center in Federal Way on November 11 and 12. Cascade swimmers are going to state, and Jackson swimmers are going to state. There's a whole list of them. We'll get their names into your Friday report. High school conferences were held at Everett High. Fall conferences were very successful, have been a very successful implementation at Everett High School. They're extremely well attended. This is the fourth conference in the last 2 years. And by our counts, the best attended yet. It was, and that was based on a number of schedules that were distributed, about 270, which means that somewhere between 270 and 540 people showed up, depending on whether two parents or guardians came or just one. And there were some families that had more than two adults show up. In addition to teachers, there were LMS folks, so parents who didn't know how to access the online student success program could do so. And there was a daycare center in the upstairs gym for folks with younger kids who needed some watching. And there were 5 translators for parents who were not English speakers. And PTA had a table at the conference. The NJROTC students helped was set up, and we appreciate all the work that went into that effort. October learning walks are now done since it's November, right? The purpose of our learning walks was to provide our instructional team members the opportunity to observe students engaged in learning experiences that utilize technology, increase student engagement and academic achievement. So let's be really clear. These are walks of large teams of folks. They're not designed to evaluate teaching. They're designed to observe the process of student learning and how the classroom is structured and what kinds of activities students are involved in and the types of instructional strategies that are being used and what the observable effect is from those events. During October, staff visited Sequoia, Gateway, Lowell, and Whittier, and a particular focus of this round was observing the instructional integration of technology. So we were using that SAMR model that you've seen at conferences and that is being used by Jeff Utek with all of our staff in training here. So we were watching for whether or not the particular lesson that day on that visit was at the substitution level, was at the augmentation level, was at the modification level, or the redefinition level, and also where it fit within the where it fit within the Danielson framework. So this is a process that will be going on for some time, and we'll be able to observe and then describe for the district how we're progressing and the extent to which we're able to observe higher and higher levels of integration over time as we conduct training and provide people the tools to do this work, including time with each other. So this is a great activity that you'll be hearing about during the State of School Reviews. I may have shared with you, I know I shared at the most recent Superintendent's Leadership Team, our special ed group achieved the highest rating again from OSPI as a result of their special education review. This level 1, 2, 3, 4 structure is something you probably are used to my sharing with you. We had a little bit of a slip last year. We slipped to level 2 because of I think 1 or 2 IEPs. It may have been, or disproportionality within a subgroup, as I recall the discussion. We're back up to level 1, and the determination was based on unresolved. The level of determination depends on the existence of unresolved special education audit findings, if any, timely correction of noncompliance issues, timely, reliable, and accurate data, performance on the state performance plan indicators, and information about ongoing monitoring activities. So we did really well. Probably we didn't have any of those things, except really good performance and high ratings on the state level, right? So I want to thank Becky Clifford and her team for the incredible work. This is a major compliance tool that OSPI uses, and you never know when it's going to get used for a political purpose. In fact, it was, Mr. Moore will probably correct me, in about 2009 or so, 2008, 2009, when the Obama economic development program shot a lot of money into school districts across the state, and the pipeline they chose was the IDEA structure. And in order to be able to use it for other purposes, you had to be at a level 1, which frustrated a whole lot of folks because it wasn't supposed to be used for that purpose. So anyway, we're back up at level 1. We've been at level 1 most of the years that I think we've been rated in this program. I think all but the one, and we're delighted that we're there again. Thank you very much, Becky. Good news, our district went through the bond rating process with Standard & Poor's and Moody's. Standard & Poor's held our rating at the same level it's been for the last, since 2008. Moody's decided that they would increase our rating 1 level, which places us, I think, in a group of districts, 6, 7 districts in the state that have this level of rating. 8, thank you. What did I say, 6 or 7? It's 8. Because what? Now we're one of them. So it's 8 including us, and it's districts like Bellevue and Seattle, districts with very large tax bases, as I recall the key factor that folks look at. So Moody's assigned that rating, that increase in rating, not just for the bonds that we plan on selling, but for all of the existing bonds that are outstanding, 146 million exactly for all the outstanding debts. So that's very positive, and they cited several credit strengths attributable to the rating increase, including our tax base and our strong and proactive management team that demonstrates conservative budgeting practices, including conducting multi-year forecasts, cash flow projections, scenario analysis, and a host of other things, attributes that they reviewed with us during the process of those interviews. So I want to congratulate everybody involved in this and thank Mr. Moore for his leadership and literally staying on top of this thing for months and months and months and months and months. That's an incredible accomplishment, and we're very much hoping that our newspaper will pick that up. What's ahead is the WASDA annual conference, and I believe everyone is going to be going to that one here on the board again. And then we've got a regular board meeting on the 22nd of November, and then a special on the 29th. Then you've got one regular board meeting in December, and you can look forward to winter break, the 19th through January 2nd. That is my report this evening. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Dr. Cohn. We're now at section 9.0, our strategic monitoring report, and tonight we're going to look at instructional materials overview and adoption schedule. I'm looking forward to this. I know we've had this conversation over the years as far as what does that look like, and what are the implications of it. So, Dr. Scott, I will let you take it away, but I know there's a cast of thousands.
There are a cast of thousands, and we're
Yeah.
happy to be here. A cast of 5, I think,
Okay.
here. But they'll bring the punch like it's 1,000.
Oh,
Let's put it that
excellent.
way. It's good to be here. We're excited to share our instructional materials overview and adoption schedule with you this evening. The purpose of our presentation this evening is to review current and future instructional materials needs, and as importantly, the factors that drive those needs. We'll also want to provide an overview of the approximate financial implications of these plans, and then we're going to outline next steps after that. This is the strategic goal set that sort of is the underpinning of our presentation this evening. The KPOs here, you'll notice that most of them exist in the teaching and learning priority area. We do have a resource management KPO there that's very, very important. This piece here, this offers an overview by content area of core adoptions in the last 15 years. So this is taking a longer view. It really helps us map out what might be next up chronologically on the adoption schedule. I'll give you a second to take a look at that. There's a lot of information there.
Is the shelf life typically 15 years?
It's not typically 15 years. It's
Okay.
typically 7 to 8 years.
Okay, thank you.
There are other considerations to take into account besides chronology, of course. Materials should prepare students for college and career. We know that. They should be able to draw out 21st century skills in our students and facilitate students practicing 21st century skills using the materials that we provide. Alignment with standards. This is really, really important. Not, as you know, not all curricular materials are created equal in the sense that not all are aligned to the standards. And that's been true for the advent of the Common Core State Standards, and it's arguably even more true and more noticeable with the advent of the next generation science standards. Materials should also lead to common course outcomes. They should also take into account the diversity of learning styles and platforms in the digital age, and this is also very, very important. Supporting inquiry-based approaches to learning, high-quality text with multimedia tools. Materials should be compatible with our tech tools, and in turn, those tech tools should be able to enhance and transform and deepen the learning of our students. Our policies and procedures around adoption of core instructional materials includes a mandate that we're vetting for and ensuring anti-bias, cultural relevance, a place to teach digital citizenship, and so that includes the appropriate uses of technology and the effective uses of technology. For example, how do we evaluate the credibility of sources online? Accessibility for student populations, special student populations, and we need to budget for initial use and continuing professional development in order to support implementation. And so this process for vetting, recommending, and ultimately you as a board approving the adoption materials is anchored in our shared core values of equity, collaboration, connectivity to our continuous improvement process, and our instructional growth model. So the lineup this afternoon, you'll see here, I've got my team here. We're going to go over a 5-year forecast of potential instructional materials needs in these content areas, and I'm going to hand it off to Holly and then George after that.
So we are currently engaged in a comprehensive elementary core literacy adoption process that includes addressing reading, writing, listening, and speaking. We initiated this adoption because our current program, Good Habits, Great Readers, was adopted prior to our state standards, the Common Core State Standards. And as a result, there are some shifts in instruction that are not integrated into this program, including writing from sources, using contextual evidence, and analyzing complex text. Also this year, we are adopting AP English Language and Composition and AP Literature and Composition materials. And in this adoption, we are focused on high-quality print and digital instructional materials in order to provide rigorous AP English courses that more closely align with College Board expectations, Common Core State Standards, and 21st century skills.
and that provide access to high-quality texts, including visual, multimedia, and interactive digital texts and tools. This adoption will afford AP English teachers the opportunity to collaborate in the development of Common Core syllabi, to incorporate the instructional materials, and also to share best practice strategies for student success in AP English courses. With our 612 intervention instructional materials adoption, we look forward to providing support for secondary struggling readers and writers with Common Core aligned materials that help us realize what research says makes a difference for student achievement in a standards-focused, technology-transformed intervention class. We expect to offer teachers and students instructional materials that provide the additional support needed for these students, that take advantage of the power of utilizing technology to support individualized learning, and that offer teachers the opportunity to provide more one-to-one and small group instruction.
Our collaborative process for all adoptions, including the English language arts area, involve following the board policy. We convene an adoption team representing schools, courses, grades, programs to review and select the materials based on the key criteria, including alignment with our standards, 21st century skills, and best practices, accessibility to support programs, and finally, robust digital resources and platforms.
Science is looking forward to sports medicine curriculum implementation in the 2017-18 school year and reviewing curriculum options during this academic school year. We've expanded this course in 2 ways. It is now being offered at all 3 comprehensive high schools. Prior to this year, it was a career and technical education program, so a CTE course. Because of the amount of science in this course, we had it reviewed by the equivalency committee, and it is now equivalent to a science course. If students take this course, they fill science and CTE elective requirements. However, the curriculum is currently the current curriculum is outdated. The next generation science standards are framed in a way that requires students to function as scientists, engineers, and practitioners. As a result of this framing in the NGSS, the CTE industry standards, and the 21st century skills, we are looking for a curriculum that is project or problem-based, authentic, and relevant. Due to the district's technology integration efforts and moving one-to-one, we are looking for curriculum that includes digital and online resources and tools, including the support of enrichment and intervention. The Sports Medicine Curriculum Review Committee is currently reviewing or identifying curriculum options to review. The committee will start meeting in November to analyze the NGSS, the CTE, and 21st century skills and begin to review curriculum options based on all those standards alignment. The team will meet with ELL and special ed facilitators to understand how the selection items support all learners. The teachers will pilot selections of options between November and March in order to receive student feedback. And the selections will be reviewed by science and CTE staff members and provided for the public to review. The committee hopes to have a selection determined by early spring. The NGSS standards are new standards, and subsequently there are few curricular options to review. You will note that the Core 910 Science is scheduled for implementation in the 2018-19 academic school year. We have deferred this process for 18 months in order to assure that that what we adopt is truly aligned to those new standards. The same is true for our K-5 instructional materials. We look forward to presenting recommendations when the marketplace has further developed NGSS-aligned curriculum.
I'm going to be representing several content areas tonight that don't have an immediate adoption process and implementation process in the next year. So math is next up. So you'll notice that on the horizon is a core math 6-8 adoption, so middle school adoption implementation year 18-19. It's important to take a look at the drivers behind this particular place in the calendar, so to speak. This is about strengthening alignment to the Common Core. So we believe that our current materials are aligned to the Common Core, but there needs to be some strengthening associated with it, not unlike other content areas. And that's what we do in the normal course of our updating of curriculum maps and so forth. And we do that in a collaborative fashion Wanted to emphasize that point, that this is about strengthening alignment, not establishing it for the first time with the Common Core. It's also like most, if not all of these areas, this is about integrating the technology tools. Importantly here, integrating new ways to teach computational thinking. So new ways to integrate the principles of computer science as a avenue to go deeper in understanding of algebra, for example. And then building in and supporting interventions for both struggling learners and advanced learners. So back to Georgia for humanities.
With the adoption of instructional materials for our psychology course, which is a semester-long elective course in social studies, we will complete the work we have been doing over the past few years to ensure that district secondary social studies courses support students and teachers to access rigorous course content and digital resources in the social sciences that align with Common Core standards, social studies standards, 21st century skills, and best practice. For the core K through 5 social studies adoption scheduled for implementation in 2020-2021, we look forward to providing instructional materials for our students and teachers that align with the standards, including state social studies standards and the Common Core state standards for history social studies, as well as supporting students in development of 21st century skills and materials that reflect best practice in social studies and offer robust digital resources in order to provide our students with opportunities for rich, inquiry-based learning, which is called for by our standards. For world languages, the AP Spanish Literature and Culture course will be offered for the first time in our district next year. And so we're looking forward to adopting high-quality print and digital resources to provide a rigorous fifth-year Spanish course that aligns with College Board expectations for this class and with 21st century skills. As with other AP course adoptions, we also look forward to developing a professional learning community for this course and collaboration by this PLC to develop and implement a Common Core syllabus for this new course in fall of 2017. With our World Languages 812 adoption, we will be able to provide teachers and students with instructional materials that align with revised state world language standards and that incorporate the Common Core and best practices in world language learning, as well as the kind of resources, both print and digital, that will provide a richer, more rigorous, engaging, and effective study of language and culture. This adoption will also provide us with the opportunity to develop common content and outcomes across middle and high schools for courses that are now required not only by our 24-credit graduation requirement, but also for college and career readiness. For World Language K-5, we're looking forward to developing a high-quality world language program in our elementary schools. Adoption of these instructional materials will provide support for an early start to language learning, and thus the opportunity for our students to build language proficiency. Since the earlier and longer students are engaged in learning a language, the more proficient they become. In addition, these resources will help students engage in experiences that build 21st century skills and a deeper appreciation for language and culture. In the visual and performing arts, we have a focus on our theater, music, and visual arts adoptions. And those adoptions will provide us with an opportunity to align our courses with state art standards that are currently under revision. And it will also help us support students in the development of 21st century skills. These resources will support best practices and take advantage of what digital resources can offer to engage and accelerate student learning, reflection, creation, and performance in the arts. For the AP Studio Art courses that we have in our district, we want to, as with other AP courses, provide high-quality print and digital resources to support student success and align more closely with College Board expectations, standards, and 21st century skills. Well, these AP Studio Art Design courses are, of course, hands-on in terms of the creation of student artwork and development of portfolios. With these resources, students will have the opportunity to deepen their thinking and push the creative process. These resources are really remarkable in terms of the arts.
So we're going to focus on functional academics, and functional skills are the essential skills needed for independence and quality of life for individuals or students with significant disabilities. And we want instructional materials that are aligned to common core state standards and the essential academic learning requirements. We also want to ensure that students with disabilities have access to general education and that their instructional materials meet their individual needs. So we are following the district adoption process, and the adoption team will first be, as they've been collaborating and coordinating with the other core adoption material processes, analyze and determine what core instructional materials can be modified and implemented in the classes to teach the students academics and meet their individual needs, and then determine what complementary instructional materials we need to adopt to support the range of needs or to provide alternative instruction for students with disabilities who have a wider range of needs.
For health and fitness, what's on the horizon here is a refreshing and in some cases a replacing of our focus fitness materials within our focus fitness curriculum. Robert shared with me that one of the conversations that he has frequently is how to better complement a refreshing of these materials with the increased attention paid to social emotional learning. So it has a connection to last week's study session on social emotional learning. So we are paying attention to current trends and patterns in terms of the health, wellness, and the overall perceptions of our students' experiences in our schools. So these summary slides, the next several, focus on, this one in particular focuses on the consumable costs over the next 2 years. And you can see that they're substantive. For Springboard, they're certainly substantive for handwriting, elementary math. I have two of my own students. Often I see these consumables come home in their homework, and so I know full well what they're dealing with and engaged with. And then our science lab materials. We have a rich and robust science kit operation, and so the idea of refreshing those materials is very, very important. Summary costs here. So we've got an estimated $11 million over the next 5 years. And we've got consumables will be in the neighborhood of $600,000 per year over the next 2 years. And these estimates include considerations for enrollment growth, for inflation, for increased interest in courses. We've seen a dramatic increase in the number of students enrolled in AP courses, for example, typically with a factor of about 10%. So we've got other considerations here. Increasing technology and innovation creates really exciting opportunities, but also lots of unknowns to meet the needs of 21st century learners in new and engaging ways. So we're going to continue to assess chronological priorities. We're going to time the availability of standards-aligned materials. You heard that emphasized with respect to the next generation science standards, given these significant financial investments. And next steps as a cabinet, we are going to be working together to prioritize materials adoptions and coordinate with our larger long-term fiscal planning. We'll continue to monitor short and long-term implications of introducing materials that are both compatible and complementary to our one-to-one technology investments. So this evening, we've reviewed potential long-term adoption plans and associated drivers. We've shared projected financial implications, and we've outlined key points for future conversations. Are there any questions?
All right. Thank you, Dr. Scott.
And I'll call on my team here, too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Board members or Student Representative Carrillo, do we have any questions for the team?
I have a quick question. As I heard for art being aligned with 21st century skills, but I believe with 24 credits for high school graduation, there is more art requirement. We've expanded our world languages to accommodate, or are expanding our world languages to accommodate that expansion. Are we also looking at expanding our art offerings because of that expansion? Or is that part of this? I'm not sure.
Yeah, that adoption process is going to take place far into the future, but we are just continuing to meet the needs as students are signing up to meet that 24 credit requirement with the class that will be coming in as ninth graders next fall.
Okay.
And we're also looking at possibilities of arts courses being offered at the middle school level as well to begin that process of earning those credits earlier.
Okay, thank you.
So let's be clear, that's not a signal about depth and breadth of art offerings, but volume of and the need to replace or augment instruction.
Yes.
Careful about setting signals we don't intend to send.
I appreciate that.
Other questions?
Yes, I had a question regarding your world language slide, number 14. You mentioned Spanish, AP Spanish Literature and Culture. The 5th year is what I thought I heard. My question is, you're anticipating implementation year to be 2017, 2018 for 5th year AP Spanish?
I want to clarify that. Yeah, go ahead and talk about the adoption.
Yeah, we're planning to implement it next fall in 2017, 2018. And we already have students who are heritage speakers and other students who are interested in being able to access that course. It will follow students taking AP Spanish Language and Culture. And then this also provides an opportunity for those students who start Spanish in 8th grade to be able to have 5 years of Spanish, including those 2 AP level courses.
Right. But those that are starting in 8th grade, that started this year, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
but we have heritage speakers and other students in our system who are ready for this now.
Wow. My next question is, who is on the equivalency committee? Is that a local committee here, or is that through with OSBI? When you start talking about an equivalency from taking a CTE class and making it a regular non-CET.
We have a course equivalency committee here chaired by Jeannie Willard.
Oh, okay, so it's local.
It is local. They certainly follow state guidelines on what's permissible, but and we've got a policy and procedure around course equivalencies that I believe is typically refreshed annually, I want to say. So you will most likely be seeing that soon. But that team gets together quite frequently to talk about course equivalencies that arise.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah.
This is a general question, but has the cost of instructional materials decreased at all with technology? For example, is an e-textbook less expensive than an old hardcover textbook?
You know, it really isn't. The publishers figured out, with all due respect to the publishers, that their digital resources are as much or more than a typical textbook. If a textbook ranged between 100 and 120, a high school textbook, hard copy or hardbound, between $100 and $120. Typically, it's more cost effective to purchase in a bundle, like you would your cable bill, your home and your internet and your whatever else comes with the bundle.
Television.
That could be a slippery slope. Yeah. So where I was going with that was that it's much in the same way they offer these a la carte options, but they're no less. I think over time they will become less and more cost effective than in print. Certainly for shipping costs, we would save. Shipping and deployment, if you think about the people power it does take, and I don't need to, these guys know better than anybody what the deployment procedures entail. It's pretty arduous.
Yeah. And
Did
just
that answer your question?
tracking them and,
Tracking them, the inventory, the delivery, the paying attention to who's new in an assignment. That's a whole nother ball of wax. The idea that we want to make sure that we're getting materials in the hands of folks day one. Well, before day one, we've got initial use training during the summer, quite robust. We've got a initial use curriculum component in our new teacher orientation, our 4-day new teacher orientation. And so what we want to have teachers doing is get those materials in their hands as part and parcel of their classroom setup, so they feel prepared and confident for day one.
Can I follow up on your question? I was just curious, in any curriculum adoption today, as we move forward, do updates come digitally in real time? So for much like an app, you would get an update because it's not hardbound anymore?
Yeah, I mean, if you take, Springboard might be a good example of refreshing digital resources. George, you want to talk a little bit about how that works as one example?
Yeah.
Absolutely, because Springboard continues to offer more and more digital resources to our teachers. Like this year, we have an entirely new program called Zinc that teachers can use for boosting students' academic vocabulary and aligning reading materials at different levels of students' reading strength areas. And also, Springboard is going to be providing us with a brand new edition next fall, where they have revised to completely update some of their units with more current affairs, current events to engage students. And it's pretty exciting to see what's still coming.
So,
just one example.
Yeah, so curriculum adoptions could move to a more of a annual subscription model with updates, as opposed to throw down a chunk of change going forward in the future.
Absolutely,
okay.
That's correct.
Go ahead.
Sorry for missing most of the presentation. I did have an opportunity to go through the slides. I had a little doggy emergency, and he's home with his cone of shame on now. My question.
There's a story
Poor
behind
guy. My question is really, and this might even be a Jeff question.
I like that name.
He's got his little cone on. The cost of $11 million, as I look at that amount, which seems huge, I have no reference point in terms of what our instructional materials have cost us over the years. I assume, we have spent about that much proportionately, and that's sort of how it gets budgeted out, but I actually don't even know that, and I'm just curious, a little clarification of how do we go about setting aside money for curriculum adoption, knowing they're coming, and I'm sure you don't have a number off the top of your head historically what we've spent, but sort of how does that process work from a financial standpoint?
Yeah, I'll invite Jeff up to talk about how he incorporates these numbers into his forecasting. But we actually do have a pretty solid understanding of our historical spending patterns. And so the idea, you saw last year a 7-year forecast where we just kind of have this sliding window of forecasts. Some years are far more expensive than others. For example, this year's costs are just shy of $1 million. When you look at something like a K-5 ELA adoption at an estimated $2.2 million, it's going to not embellish is the word. It's going to be the lion's share of some very large sum at the end of the day with respect to that calendar year. So in terms of how we pace that out, we do try to pace that out. We know that we oftentimes historically have done phase 1 and phase 2 for several reasons. One would be a fiscal reason. Instead of paying $1.4 million in 1 year, we would split those costs out over 2 years. And we take into consideration the deployment schedule and take into consideration what else is on the teachers' plates at any given year at that level. We're learning how to navigate and transform our instruction using new technology tools. And so you take those things into consideration. Can we then handle a set of new science kits in the same year? Can we handle other technology-rich adoptions in that same year? So it's about balance and timing, and certainly we work in concert with Jeff and his team in talking about what is it that the budget can afford.
I think when you look back over the last 8 years, which is what I'm familiar with, there was a period of time when we cut way, way, way back, which is why you didn't see so many adoptions, and that was directly related to the Great Recession and all of those cuts that came at us during the 2008, 2009, 2010, 11 kind of time period. So, when I came aboard, we were just at the end of the process to put that ELA adoption in place, and my recollection was we were talking $1.5 million, $2 million. So I think if you look at an adoption of that nature and you think about rotating those things out over several years, you're almost looking, plus all of the consumables that we've now acquired the responsibility for, Springboard being one of them, you're probably looking at around $2 million a year. And if we have to cut that back, we're going to have to look at stretching some things out, just like we do with capital. And hopefully we won't, but we could find ourselves in a position if the state undercuts us substantially, that we could be looking at having to discontinue some of the updates in some fashion. And I'm not sure what the implications are, because we haven't talked extensively about shifting to a digital environment in terms of the capital fund and which things are eligible for capital expenses and which ones are not, because their technology and their licenses and all of it. So there are implications, and as we see a move in that direction, we'll have to adjust our projections for you, and until we know a little bit more about who's going to be digital ready with things, it's a little bit hard to predict.
In your materials, you have a 5-year forecast on a kind of an 11 by 14 here, and it is between $1 and $2.4 million in the next 3 years, on average.
Can I ask one last one?
No, Jeff just mentioned that's built into the 5-year projection that he just provided.
Okay.
So it's taken into account.
Yeah.
We're very closely together
Yeah.
on those things. Yeah.
And then one other question, shifting away from the finances. Is there anything that didn't make the list? Like if we were to go out and ask all the teachers what their wants and desires would be, would there be something that sort of rose to the top?
I don't know if I can answer the question of whether or not what would rise to the top, and we certainly haven't surveyed them in that regard. You may, in speculation, you may get teachers saying, we need to refresh this discrete course or that discrete course. You saw in the math slide that you had calculus and pre-calculus and algebra 2 and those kinds of things.
Right.
We get quite a few hallway conversations when we're out in the field about solicited and unsolicited, where the strengths and challenges are associated. And we need to, and we do take those. These are users at the local level, and we need to pay attention to what they're saying about what the instructional materials are doing and how they are complementing. I think this is the most important point, how they're complementing new instructional design and delivery in the digital age that we're living in at this point. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
I think if you put a request out there, you could count on getting a lot of
Oh,
response.
absolutely.
Yeah,
I understand that. I just was thinking, are there things, limited funds, and are there things that are sort of not making the list because we just, we're taking the highest priority, and what would sort of those next?
Well,
and then you also get a lot of different opinions from,
absolutely.
you asked
1,200
teachers, I bet you get 1,200 answers.
So what's, I think, important to know is that the staff charged with doing this work all the way up to the associate superintendent has identified this list as the priorities for the district, and you've got to decide whether or not you agree or not.
And inherent in some of the conversations was the idea of deferring for a year or even 2 years while these are substantial investments, and what we don't want to do is jump in too soon and commit to materials that purport to be, next gen science standards aligned,
right.
and find out in short order that isn't the case in practice.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions? I had a question. I appreciate your comment regarding the deployment schedule and how we roll this out and the role of technology. And as the presentation was going forward, I actually went on and looked at kind of our technology professional development schedule, because there's a lot of professional development that is embedded in both the technology plan and this plan. And I'm trying to get a sense of what is the professional development dollars required to do both somewhat simultaneously, and do we have the organizational bandwidth to pull that off?
Yes. In fact, we've been talking about that as a cabinet. And when you, and I've been, and my colleagues have been quite gracious in listening to the idea that we need to continue to invest in initial use training and year one training. We can't abandon, we can't assume that an August professional development session, an initial use professional development session, and send them on their way. Year one in instructional adoption PD is incredibly powerful, because we're continuing to unpack the standards, we're continuing to unpack the instructional design that's built into this curriculum that works best with this curriculum. And so those dollars are in the order, I don't want to speak off the top of my head with those dollars, but in the six figures and they stand alongside, and I don't want to say they stand in competition of the tech dollars, because we know that we prioritize, and we say, and we remind ourselves over and over again, Dr. Stewart and others in particular, we've got technology commitments to do this right, and it costs, there's a substantial investment to, quote, do this right. There's also, we feel the same way in curriculum, and so those two things have to be working in tandem, and so far so good. They have been.
Yeah, I'm looking at roughly $250,000 a year for the next 4 years, 5 years for technology adoption, and then I'm wondering what the professional development costs will be for curriculum adoptions. And
here's an example. So a very large scale K-5 ELA adoption. If I may, the budget for the adoption process alone, Holly's team is upwards of 40 people. We've got parents, we've got primary and intermediate teachers, we've got a wide range, diverse group in that adoption team. We budgeted $40,000 for the process alone to get us to a recommendation that we would bring to the Instructional Materials Committee that would then bring a recommendation to the superintendent, and we'd go forward from there. So that's a substantive investment of time. Then you think about this summer. We've got 450 plus elementary teachers. You think about the summer initial PD, that's a substantial cost. We've got $90,000 budgeted for that. That's taken into account what we know in Holly and others consulting with folks that have done large-scale adoptions like that. This is what it's going to cost, and so we budgeted those dollars in. So they're large sums of money. And if in your question, Mr. President, is how can we do both technology?
Well, yeah, both in terms of dollars, but also capacity, or what is digestible change to introduce into an organization, because we're talking about pretty significant change that we would be bringing forward both in technology and curriculum adoption. So it's more of a comment or a cautionary tale of what is digestible for the people who are actually having to implement and use this. Yeah.
So we'll note that.
Any other questions? This is great. I mean, it's great to see what's ahead of us. Obviously, there will be competing priorities, but I appreciate the long view, so thank you. Thank you to the team. Yeah. All right, we are now at section 10.0, information discussion. We have no information or discussion items scheduled for this agenda, so we move to section 11.0. We have come to the second time slot in our agenda for public comment. Dr. Cohn, are there any requests?
There are not.
All right. We're now at section 12.0, unfinished business. We have no unfinished business scheduled for this evening, which brings us to section 13.0, new business. We have a couple of first readings of policy revisions, and so Larry, we will let you take it away.
Well, our first policy for the board to consider is in response to a WASDA model policy priority level update for July 2016. The WASDA July update has updated language in response to House Bill 2597, which now requires schools to provide support responses in instances of sexual abuse of a student. Revisions to this policy for the board's review include adding language to our existing policy for communication and notification requirements to parents in accordance to changes in RCW 28A 320-160. The revisions make clear that in our district's emotional and behavioral distress response plan, we will now need to include how staff should respond when allegations of sexual contact or abuse are made by a student, and that we have annual training for classified and certificated staff on mandatory reporting. In summary, the proposed revisions insert the response, communication, and training requirements for staff to respond to students who have allegedly been sexually abused in the existing policy. Revisions for the board have been reviewed by legal counsel and the superintendent's cabinet prior to tonight's meeting.
All right, thank you. Do we have any questions on this?
Larry, would you hit the escape key on the computer?
Do we have any questions for this policy revision?
I just had one quick question. Just because of what we've been learning about social emotional and our summer session, and it talks about sexual abuse, this update, but I'm not quite sure if in this policy or another policy is anything about the kids that are struggling with sexual identification and gender identification and the issues around that and identification of that. I'm not sure if that's appropriate for this policy or if it's someplace else, just because there has been some recent information about depression and other things that come with those decisions and announcements and whatever it is.
If you might recall, we had just recently updated their transgender policy, which has the response to students in that.
I'm sorry.
So it would be included in that particular one.
That's what I was presuming, so thank you.
Other questions? Then under general consent, we will move this to the consent agenda for our next board meeting. Okay. Policy 3122.
Policy 3122, attendance, is also a WASDA model policy essential level update for July 2016. The related model policy for attendance has drafted language around the heightened requirements of schools and school districts to address, intervene, and support students with poor or chronic absenteeism. Revisions to this policy for the board's review include adding language found in RCW 28A 225 for compulsory school attendance pursuant to changes made based on Second Substitute House Bill 2449 and the new section that was added to the existing RCW. The proposed revisions are more specific to the role and responsibility of the district in regard to truancy and the resources available to assist students and families to correct truancy issues. The proposed revisions to the policy are already established practice in our school district. These revisions for the board's review have been reviewed by the Superintendent's Cabinet and Legal Counsel.
Any questions? Then under general consensus, we will move it forward. Thank you, Larry.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. We're now at section 14.0, upcoming agenda items. Dr. Cohn, what are the upcoming items?
Item 13.1 is a special meeting. It is the annual WASDA conference, and I believe at this point in time, everyone has their travel plans solidified, so we know how everybody's getting back and forth. The agenda will be posted to our website fairly shortly. It's been some time since WASDA posted theirs, and I'm sure all of you have downloaded the app and have scheduled all of your meetings and et cetera, et cetera. So we're very much looking forward to that activity.
I have one question. Is this the place they normally have it? We stay at? Okay, gotcha. I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Sometimes they change the names, though.
Yeah, they changed the names. I just want to make sure.
Item 14.2 is your next regular meeting. You're going to receive a 24-credit plan update as your strategic progress monitoring item. You've got second reading on 2 policies. Larry, do we have any other policies planned for first reading by that time? I know we had a couple cooking. So we might have a couple more. Okay. Then you've got a number of general operating business items, fourth quarter financial report, our legislative priorities. Both of those will be presentations by Mr. Moore. And then you've got a Perkins grant, and Mr. Gunn will be back with us and will present you his recommendation, well, my recommendation, on a property purchase.
All right, thank you, Dr. Cohn. We're now at section 15.0, Board Superintendent Comments and Board Meeting Evaluation. Who would like to kick us off?
Okay, I'll start.
Director Mason.
This is one of the shorter meetings I've been to. I just wanted to say that I'm looking forward to the results of tonight's election, both nationally and in our state, and somewhat locally, although we have such incredible support around education with our local folks. But it'll be interesting to see where the next several years head, and hopefully a lot of positive change, and just so glad I'm not out there tonight.
Well, and I am also looking forward to the election results because of what it really hopefully will mean for our funding. I was talking to someone from Illinois today where they have a referendum on their ballot that schools should no longer be paid for by local levies. The state should fund them all. And the person I talked to said, well, in that would be a good idea, but when the state doesn't pay, then the local area needs to be able to pay, so they voted it down. Who knows if it'll pass or not, but I think that's what we're struggling with here as well. I do know an 18-year-old that this is his first year to vote, and he was excited when his mother mailed him his ballot in California. I did text him to make sure he returned it. And, but I heard a statistic not too long ago that children that are born, turn 18, come of age in a presidential election year are more likely to have a lifetime voting habit. And I turned 18 in 1988 and have voted, I think, in every election since then. Winners or losers, I have that same habit, and I hope that every 18-year-old, and my daughter who's 14 is so excited that 4 years from now she too will be able to vote for the next president. I just think that's really cool. And then also, Druvik, I don't know if I'm stealing any kind of thunder about Jackson news, but the Hot Mikado, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly or not, enunciating the right A, starts on Thursday. It is their play for the year. My daughter is in the costume crew, so she's in backstage wearing black, and I'll be learning what it's like to be a art drama booster as I volunteer and donate a whole lot of food and soda. But that's pretty exciting this weekend and next. Just excited to have my daughter in such a program. So thank you so much.
Well, I'm also excited for the elections, although I am 17 and I can't vote yet. Mm-hmm. But I'm in an AP government class, and we've just been learning about this topic, and I just feel so well informed. And it's so interesting. I just really hope I can't wait to get home and see see on the news what's going on right now. But so the Ever High School food drive has started. I'm very excited for that too. I always try to participate, and I'm thinking going this Saturday from 6 to 8 at QFC Broadway in case anyone wants to stop by. But it's just so exciting to see how much food we collect this year, and we got pretty high last year, and I hope that we beat our goal again. And once again, they went to state. Was it the EHS?
Cross country team.
Cross country. Okay, I'm sorry. I just completely forgot. And then the swim team also won a districts this year. And I think one of our girls did go to state or is going to state, but I'm not sure. I'll have to ask one of the swim girls. And football season ended on Friday, and I was there. I almost got ran over. I almost got tackled to the floor on the sideline. But besides, I was very excited and I was very sad to see that. I know many seniors from the football team, so it's so sad to see how all of them were depressed that their football season career ended, but it was very exciting.
Yeah, sure. So looks like I missed really the majority of this meeting today. But by the time the next regular meeting rolls around, I'll be done with my driver's ed, so I'll be there to see the 24 credit plan update. And also, as Director Mitchell said, Jackson's having its first performance of Hot Mikado on Thursday, and so it starts at 7 o'clock. If any of you would like to come, and yeah.
Well, and heck, real quick, Everett High's play starts on Thursday too. They're doing Legally Blonde.
Oh, very nice.
Entertainment for the weekend.
Entertainment, definitely. Theater.
Directors Andrew or the same? Dr. Cohn?
Oh, I did have a comment. Sorry.
Yeah, please.
Again, thank you to the staff for wonderful presentations tonight. And what a treat it was to be able to recognize Harshu once again. Just amazing. And you know, how thrilling it is to have such a talented student in our district. And lastly, I'm really pleased to hear that all the high school students are getting CPR training. I just underwent CPR training yesterday and walked away from it with a really good feeling, like I could possibly someday help save someone's life. And I'm also really thrilled to know that our students are getting training so they can possibly someday save my life or other people's. But, you know, those are those great life skills that we can give our students. So good.
I want to thank Vice President Mason during my time away. Thank you for holding down the fort. I appreciate that, and I appreciate all the cards and well wishes and text and emails, and it really, really meant a lot. So thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciated, Dr. Cohn, your comment on the October learning walks and look at what we've learned in technology. I'm just very curious to kind of hear more about what were the observations and what we learned from that. And I appreciate the effort going into curriculum adoptions long term and what that looks like. We are thinking of introducing a lot of change into the district in a very short amount of time, and how do we go about that, and what does that mean in a very interesting legislative environment coming up. So that will be interesting. And then last but not least, we are losing Luis, who will be leaving us, sitting behind the screen there. Stand up, Luis, but we wish you luck in your new role with the PUD, and congratulations. We're happy for you, but we're sad for us. But thank you for everything that you've done to support our efforts here. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're now at section 16.0. We have no executive session scheduled for this evening, and so that brings us to section 17.0. This concludes the business scheduled to come before the Everett Public Schools Board of Directors on November 8th, 2016. This meeting is now adjourned.